Yes, it is. Monday, March 2nd, 2020, as we're heading into hour 3 of our daily 3-hour tour. As promised, every Monday now, as best we can, we're going to check in with Brandon Weichert. He is the publisher of the Weichert Report, theweichertreport.com, author of an important upcoming book we'll tell you more about as well. So delighted to have him. One of the things I like about Brandon is we tend to be thinking about the same things, and often a lot the same way. I spent some of my monologue talking about Joe Biden and what it means having won South Carolina, yet with Bernie Sanders in the lead for delegates and looking like he's going to still do better than Joe Biden in the most delegate-rich states tomorrow on Super Tuesday. Brandon wrote a piece on this as well. Joe Biden won the battle. Will Bernie win the war for the DNC? Brandon, happy Monday. I hope you had a good weekend.
Oh, I have. Thank you for having me. Just ducking the coronavirus as I travel across the fruited plain of our country.
Well, say something about it, because I get asked a little bit about what I think about it here and there. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think. I will tell you that I know a lot of people who have not. Everyone I know, I should say, hasn't. Let me try an English sentence. There is nobody I know who has canceled their travel over it.
Yeah.
But how concerned should I or we be? What are you seeing on the road? Because I haven't done travel in a while.
Well, what I'm seeing is people are actually pretty not that concerned about it.
Okay.
There are a few people on the flights today that I took I was probably the most paranoid, but that's because I've been researching it.
Okay.
It's in my head.
Yeah.
And I've been asked to come down to this event to talk about sort of the national security implications. So it's kind of on my mind.
Uh-huh.
But I think that people are more aware of it, but they are not yet changing their travel plans.
Yeah.
I do know that I heard that flights are being canceled into France from the United States.
Yeah.
And I was at a symphony in Fort Myers yesterday, and apparently the pianist who was supposed to be there couldn't make it because she was coming from Shanghai and couldn't get a flight. So obviously it's affecting things like that. But so far there does seem to be sort of a steely nature to the way people are responding, sort of a humorous. There's a guy next to me who's making jokes about it the entire flight. At the same time, at the macro level, I think the fact that as a society that it's an uncertain sort of black swan event, you're seeing the ramifications to the economy and the political system. And I would just urge people to be aware that we're probably in store for more economic slowdown. And it will certainly, if it continues into the year, there will certainly have ramifications for the ongoing political debate going on. And I think actually it could play very seriously into the election in November.
Brandon, let me talk to you about that political angle for a moment. We'll do the Sanders stuff in a bit, but as long as we're here. So I was kind of scratching. I guess nothing amazes me anymore, but I was kind of scratching my head. I thought it was audacious, to put it no higher, that the left and the media started to blame Donald Trump for this thing here. And I'm thinking, this is the guy who wants travel bans. He's against globalization. He's been hard on China, and he wants to restrict immigration, and it's his fault?
Right. Well, it's Orange Man bad.
Okay.
It's become their unifying theory of everything for the left.
Yeah.
And, it's just funny. I was speaking to actually a publicist on the plane today, and she brought up the fact that she said, I'm not really supposed to say this, but I actually think everything that's happening now proves Trump right from 2016. He was the one who was warning about supply chain with China. He was the one who was saying, globalization is not as great as everybody says. We need to redo our trade. We need to make America self-sustaining again. Bring back the manufacturing so we don't have these dislocations. And I think if I were Trump, I would not be trying to sort of heel to the neoliberal globalist status quo, which I worry he's trying to do with some of the trade deals and stuff. I would be going full bore and saying, you know what, you're darn right that this is happening because China catches a cold and we're so, dependent on them, it's going to infect the world. Basically, he should be saying, if you're for open borders, you're pro-coronavirus. That's what he should be saying.
Well, I'm with you on that, Brandon, and I think there's another thing going on, too, which is right now, I don't mean to make boogeymen of this, and I don't mean to be unfair. It's just the way I read it. Right now, two countries seem to be responsible as vectors for most of the problems. Certainly China.
Yeah.
As far as infecting the Middle East, you got to say it's Iran, which has acted like China, lying, deceiving, and so forth. And yet, these are the two countries Donald Trump has taken the most criticism in being hard on. It's just a very, very odd thing.
Yeah, well,
I guess orange man bad. I guess politics trumps everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of pathetic because, this is a health crisis, and this actually has ramifications for everyone, not just health-wise.
Yeah.
But we're talking about testing the very capabilities of our system, of our infrastructure, which I am not confident in.
Right.
And under its present conditions. And so it's a little sickening to see that happening. And you have to remember, Iran and China are fused at the hip.
Yeah.
They have been very tight with trade, weapons technology development, military agreements. They just conducted in December, or maybe it was November of 2019, the big naval exercise. First time ever, the Iranian, Chinese, and Russian navies were conducting military exercises in, I think the Gulf of Arabia, or it was somewhere near the Middle East. It might have been the Mediterranean now that I think about it. But the point is, Iran and China are fused. It's not surprising this spread. And what we really should be pointing to is, thank God that Trump did even the modest amount of travel ban into China that he did. Thank God that Trump has had the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. I'd be loath to imagine if we had the numbers of people coming in from Iran into the United States that we've had from China.
And it's becoming more and more clear too that Iran did deliberately lie about this, particularly evidently as I'm reading. Right, and to protect China and to bolster their numbers to show to have a good showing for their elections, which ended up being pathetic. Right, this was a deliberate lie with a public health situation, with a public health crisis.
Absolutely, and we just shows you, and it's interesting because we were told by the technocrats morality and that stuff doesn't really matter anymore. But it's very telling that the most evil, and I use that word correctly here, the most evil and abysmal regimes on the planet, Iran and China, are the ones that are having the most difficulty with handling this disease. You would have thought with the new Beijing consensus, supposedly, that authoritarianism works the best at handling stuff like this. And in fact, it turns out that not only, are they maybe the cause of this outbreak, they've certainly made it worse, and they certainly, with all their central planning, can't stop it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Brandon. I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit more domestically, if we can, on our domestic politics. You had a column that was very much in sync with where my thinking is too.
Yeah.
Joe Biden and Bernie. Did you say I know you've been on the road. You haven't seen it. I mean, I think Biden is going to keep engaging on a daily embarrassment of himself. Today he botched badly the Declaration of Independence. Did you hear it? Did you hear what he did with the Declaration?
No, I didn't hear that. But
you want to hear it? You want to hear it?
Yeah.
This is in Texas. This is Joe Biden at a rally in Texas today.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
You know the thing, Brandon. You know the thing.
God.
It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment.
Really, well, just remember what they said about George W. Bush whenever he would have a gaffe. Well, now here we go with Biden having. I mean, I don't even think he knows where he is.
No, it's twice a day. He urged people to go out at the same rally. He was trying to encourage people to go out and vote for Super Thursday, a phrase that doesn't exist. No, I don't think anyone has ever said Super Thursday ever until today.
Well, in college, I think we used to call the night when we'd go out and get drinks Super Thursday. That was a different.
Yeah, that may have been Super Thursday, right? No, but the serious thing is the serious thing is the Sanders thing. That's the serious thing. Go ahead.
And you keep in mind, Biden won South Carolina, but that's because I said in my article last night, he threw all of his resources from the beginning into South Carolina. So it would have been kind of funny if he didn't have a good showing there.
Well, I think
South Carolina and North Carolina, he's doing well in the polls at least.
But you made another important point on the way to South Carolina, which is he really should have been running the tables if he was a moderate and people cared about moderacy. I have to take a quick break. Hold the thought. Sure. Come back on that point when we come back. We're talking to Brandon Weichert, editor and publisher of the Weichert Report, blessedly easily found at theweichertreport.com, author of an upcoming important book, Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower. We'll be right back. Little John Sebastian there for you. Another great voice is Brandon Weichert, editor and publisher of the Weichert Report. We're talking about the Democratic primaries and their implications, Brandon. Before we do, I have to tell you, just came over the transom, another piece of small breaking news, but maybe big. Hard to say just yet. It comes as a great sense of relief to me because it's one more noxious voice and face off our public airwaves. Chris Matthews retired tonight.
Yeah, I saw that.
Good riddance. I'll tell you, I mean, this guy's gotten away with crap for years. I noticed it, and it's not recent. It may have been accumulating recently, but I noticed years ago, like I'm talking in the early, 2002, I noticed how sexist he was to so many of his guests. Particularly, I remember a terrible interview he did around 2002, 2003 with Michelle Malkin, just so unbelievably demeaning. The veiled anti-Semitism throughout his comments for years and years. I'm just glad he's gone.
Yeah, no, he.
The idea that this was a moderate was wrong. It just tells me that we're not all dealing with the same compass on these things.
No, and I never knew how he got ratings because I couldn't listen to him. His affect, I could never get into it because his show, he was always yelling at his guests.
Yeah.
And so I just, that was my big problem.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised about the other stuff. The whole throw up his leg when Obama spoke.
Right.
It was embarrassing, and I wish these organizations would just be honest about who they are.
Exactly.
If they're liberal, bring in the left and let the left have their say. If they're conservative, don't do the gatekeeping thing that the Republicans love to do. Just let the conservative people in it and have their say. This whole gatekeeping thing on both parties is really getting tiresome. So good riddance, I say.
Good. I'm with you. All right. Right before the break, we were talking about Sanders and Biden, and one of the points you make in your column, which is so great, you say, but this idea of Biden and a great moderate movement, the Democratic Party, or rescuer of the moderates, why wasn't he running the tables on them? Why wasn't he running the tables until South Carolina? Right.
Well, what some people have told me when I brought this point up who are Democrats, they're like, well, look at all the other moderates that were running against him. Klobuchar, Buttigieg, they were, and I said, yeah, but at the same time, he should have been the shoo-in.
Yeah.
There shouldn't have been anybody challenging him from the moderate wing, so-called moderate wing.
Right.
Because he was the last vice president under the last quote-unquote successful Democrat president.
Right.
It should have been a no-brainer.
Right.
So obviously he's weak. And clearly, you look at the way he performs, these gaffes he's making, and it's very sad. And I think somebody should probably sit him down and say, Joe, maybe you should take some time to be with your family and relax rather than, do this, because we don't need you anymore. We don't need him to run,
Absolutely. And yet you do write, Bernie will clearly be the favorite pick among the DNC voters, but you remain unconvinced he will get the nomination.
Because there's going to be a lot of backroom deals. Now, obviously, what I'm still waiting to see, and we won't know till Wednesday, is will Bernie have just a plurality of delegates, or will he have a decisive, majority? If he has a decisive majority, that's where the guys I talked to, I told you about last week, some of the pro-Israel side of the DNC donors, they said just to spite Trump, they would probably get behind Bernie, even though they don't like him. But the question remains, if it's just a plurality of delegates he has, Bernie, will the DNC just let him take the top ticket without a fight? And I don't think so. And that's why I think these corporate media types keep asking him at these debates, or if you have a plurality, if somebody has a plurality of delegate counts, would you support that candidate? And he keeps saying no. I think, if there's a plurality, if I have the plurality, I should get the nomination.
Right.
But clearly, the DNC elite don't believe that. And so that's what I was referring to in the piece, is that I don't know yet if he's going to have a decisive advantage. We have to remember also, though, the moneyed interest of the DNC, most of them do not want him because they don't think he can win and they think he's too radical.
But they bought themselves a huge problem. I don't even know how you get over this problem. So let's say he does go into the convention without the 1991 number. But so they go to a second ballot. The decision of the second ballot of the contested convention is obviously anyone but Bernie, right? How do you how do you with a straight face say we're taking it from the guy who got the most delegates? I know we have a rule, and that's the rule, but we're taking it from him. And who do you give it to? You can't give it to anyone else who ran. You can't say, well, we're giving it to the guy who got less delegates than Bernie.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they might go for, this is where the brokered part of broker convention comes in. I think this is where Mike Bloomberg's money comes in.
Yeah, that was your theory all along.
Yeah, whether Mike Bloomberg is serious about being the nominee, I think he's certainly playing to have great. It's a leverage buyout, as Bannon keeps saying. Right. Bloomberg's doing a leverage buyout of the DNC. I think no matter what, he wants to have influence there beyond what he has. Something to consider is a wild card where maybe it is someone like a Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton, or dare I even say Oprah. Maybe it is somebody who isn't even in the running right now.
It has to be. In my view, it has to be someone who didn't run. It has to be. Because you can't say we're going to give it to the guy who got less votes than Bernie.
Well, they could, though. They could say, look, this is a brokered convention. We're gonna put somebody on the ballot who's running, the next runner-up, who everybody can get behind, and then maybe Biden nominates someone like Elizabeth Warren, or Biden nominates somebody that he thinks will appeal to the sort of woke majority that like Bernie. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I do know it's going to be a nasty fight. And remember, 1968, that didn't go the way the Democrat voters really wanted it. And also remember the Republican convention with Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan, where Reagan was clearly the preferred nominee of the voters. But somehow they did this, Paul Manafort was leading the effort to get Ford to be the nominee in, 76?
Yeah.
And it was a whole manipulated event behind the scenes. And so I think there's precedent in both parties for something like this happening.
The other problem on top of all of this is you have the most ardent of supporters, the most dedicated of supporters, workers, are Bernie supporters. I think they all, they're going to stay home. They're going to be angry, and this is what I mean. I mean, the candidate the Democrats have to find is maybe a candidate who hasn't been invented, someone who can take so many Republican votes away from Trump that it overcomes the tens of thousands of Bernie supporters who will stay home.
Yes. Who is both woke enough to appeal to the Bernie people, and who is, conservative or traditional enough to appeal to the blue-collar workers that the Democrats lost in 2016 to Trump.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to find that candidate. And, I don't know if Biden is going to be the guy. All I know is that if it's anybody but Bernie, the elite of the DNC will be happy, but they have just set themselves up to lose.
Yeah.
And because unless, God forbid, there's a huge catastrophe before November, which who knows?
Yeah.
The idea that Bernie would be, appealing to a majority of voters outside of the coast is very low.
Yeah.
So, that's the issue.
That's the issue, brother. Thank you for checking in. I'm going to keep you every Monday.
Thank you.
We're going to stick to it as best we can. You got it, Brandon. Brandon Weichert, folks, the Weichert Report, theweichertreport.com. God bless you, brother. Safe travels.
Thank you.